Everyone's panicking about the tariffs. Markets are temporarily crashing. Headlines are screaming. Chaos everywhere you look. But there's always something deeper in the works. Some would say, step by step, this is a playbook unfolding, not just random moves, but deliberate actions being taken by President Trump to reshape this economy. And crypto, it seems we're poised, we're positioned right at the center of this. So today we're gonna break all of this down. We'll unpack Trump's strategy and the ripple effects it's having throughout the whole global marketplace, and how it's actually all setting up a beautiful stage for Bitcoin to unfold its biggest next move. So stay locked in if this sounds interesting to you, because once you can understand the full grand scheme of things, it changes how you feel in the moment. So let's jump into it. And please like and subscribe if this information helps you stay prepared and in tune with what's going on in the marketplace, because I will be here Monday through Friday to help inform you of what's going on. And I know I missed yesterday. I'm so sorry. I was actually traveling and got stuck in customs for a lot longer than I was hoping. So anyway, it all cleared up. And yeah, you have to love Thailand. But get your visa before coming in. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so first off, we're going to do a quick recap of what has been happening in the marketplace and how it's shaken global and international marketplaces. So first off, as you would see on my screen, as shared by Binance, you would see that the cryptocurrency market liquidated. It lost approximately $1.37 billion in 24 hours. And this was on the 7th. Mind you, today we're on the 9th. But because this news came out after my last video, I'm just recapping this all so you know from a fresh stance where we are right now. So this is what happened on the 7th. We then had some shocking news from the internet, the Asian markets. We have Hong Kong that suffered one of its steepest declines since 1997. Its market closed with a loss of 13.2%. Next, we have Singapore reporting its worst single-day crash in over 16 years. And this fear rippled across other countries, because we can see in Poland, as shared by Yahoo Finance, they actually ended up having to halt trading. Like, how bad does the market have to get for a country to just put a stop on all trading? It sounds like Robinhood with the whole GameStop short selling that was going on. This was really quite shocking. So it's, of course, no doubt why international traders and investors and the whole world was freaking out. But as I said in last videos, this was so needed. And as you'll see towards the end of this video, you'll see how many countries are coming to the table. According to Scott BESSENT, we'll get into this in great detail, we have approximately almost 70 countries worldwide that, despite their initial resistance against the tariffs, they've already come to the table to start negotiating fairer trade. And then, of course, we have the bond market that reacted adversely and quite dramatically as well. As we can see here, shared by Kobesi Letter, let me read what they say. They say the 10-year note yield has erased its overnight decline and now trades above 4%. So what is so significant here? Apparently the 4% is much like a resistance line or support line. And this is a big indicator to investors. And what this actually means in actuality is that it affects, as I read here in my notes, the 10-year yield affects mortgage rates, loan costs, corporate borrowing, and valuation models. So a yield over 4% means higher borrowing costs and can pressure stocks, especially in tech and growth names, especially in tech. And moving on to 2 days later, to today, April the 9th, you can see that the 10-year Treasury hit 4.5%, as shared here by Unusual Whale. And then we have news coming from bank trading desks, with many of them asking their traders not to go home and prepare for a limit down event at the Asian opening tonight. So maybe you're unfamiliar with this, but there are basically three market makers globally, and they all work together. There is the US-based market makers, and then there's Asia and Europe, and they all work together and in preparation for each other's openings and closing, and they pass on their data between each other. So this is quite incredible if you couple it with the fact that Poland, for instance, also asked and basically shut off all trading for this and because of this turbulent time. And to hone in a little bit more on how bad things got and have gotten in the last 48 hours, although we do have phenomenal news coming in today, so just hang tight for that. But you can see that as shared here by Adam Kobesi, who's actually the founder of Kobesi Letters, where we get a lot of our information from. You can see that the asset sell-off was across the board, across all asset types. So bonds, gold, S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and crude oil. And this was, as he goes on to say, defying historical correlations, coming with drops across all asset types, as I said. And then he goes on to say, it's not often you see a market where all assets are liquidated at the same time. So this is, of course, unprecedented and definitely historical, but as are the regulations that are rolling out. So we have to connect all the dots and not just look at the markets and how they're reacting as an isolated case, right? It's always in correlation with the larger conversation that's happening globally. So let's keep going to find out what that conversation is. And then lastly, if we take a look as shared here by Ali Charts, you can see that in terms of technical analysis, which is something else to take into account, although I do believe that technical analysis in itself is not enough to evaluate the market, because this information, this chart, as you see on the screen here, will be and is impacted by new global policy, by economical policy, by news of wars starting and, beginning. So you cannot just look at technical analysis all in and of its own, but we should consider it, right? It's at least a temperature check on how the market is doing right now, and not necessarily foretelling, although sometimes it is, if there's nothing extraordinary happening in the market, as is happening right now. So once again, you can see that April 7th, so since my last video, you can see that Bitcoin flashed the death cross 50-day moving average, dipping below the 200-day moving average. I covered this also in my last video, but you can see that we're still in the same pattern for Bitcoin. And then if we take a look at how Bitcoin's price reacted, you can see that Bitcoin fell below a key figure, a key number, a key resistance level of $75,000, and did see $500 billion erased from the market. So this was quite significant, but I think everyone who's aware of Bitcoin's long-term value and is attuned, this is not your first bull run, then, and you do follow the news regularly, then I don't think you're actually alarmed right now. But I think if you're new in crypto and in Bitcoin, then this is definitely alarming to you, because it's your first time seeing, turbulence in the market, and it's your money. So it's very natural to be panicked the first time around. But for everyone that I know, as we'll see here in a moment as well, everyone who's been in the market for some time, we're not actually worried about this unless you're over leveraged. If you're over leveraged and you're longing or shorting the market, which is why I don't recommend it unless it's your gamble, throwaway money, something you're just doing for fun and speculation. But if it's money you actually need to live and for your future, then I don't recommend trading unless you're like a total professional in this, right? And even then, take some insurance out on yourself. So let's keep moving forward. So we know that was quite shocking and a bit traumatic for those that are new in the market. But you can see as we continue on, and this is where I think the show starts to get juicy. So hopefully you're still watching. You can see that there was, immediate retaliation. As soon as Trump came out with his tariffs news, we had, a backlash statement from the EU, from the European Union, saying this wasn't right and that they were also, going to have to look after their own interests. And they used their own, strong verbiage there to insinuate they weren't going to take this tariffs, you know, and that they were going to retaliate in some way. Many countries reacted that way. Not all countries. We know Vietnam said they had no intention of retaliating with any sort of tariff. Many countries immediately came to the table to negotiate, including Israel. So, but anyway, it was still quite, how could I say it, the tsunami of bad news sort of flooding to the market, hence the reason the market reacted as it did. And that's why we saw all the drops across all the asset types. But we've had a huge change of heart across the global markets coming in from other countries, which we'll see here in a second. But the one that did not back down was China. Now, China is a huge superpower. If you've not been doing your own research on your own, then I'm here to update you quickly. But China is the US's biggest competitor in AI, in so many regards. China is one of the world's superpowers. And they came back with saying that, you know, they were going to increase their tariffs against American goods, I believe like up over 34%. And so Trump came out saying, as I read here on the screen, he said, if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuse by tomorrow. So it was a very direct sort of threat, right? But we know Trump doesn't bluff. So I think they took it seriously. He says, by tomorrow, that was fast, right? By tomorrow, April 8th, which was yesterday, he says the United States will impose an additional tariff on China of 50%. So let's keep reading. This went into effect. And as of yesterday, China's stock market fell by 10% after Trump threatened an additional 50% tariff. And their president, you know, which I mean no disrespect to him, he decided to fight till the end. And the White House announced that the 104% tariff on China took effect at noon today. Or perhaps this is your yesterday if you're in the US. So you would already know this, but maybe you didn't follow the news, so I'm here to update you. So this is already in effect. And as soon as it did, and this is what's so interesting and beautiful to see happening in real time, is the art of negotiation, the art of deal making that President Trump is very good and quite tenured at, quite experienced. You can see that the American market immediately bounced back a little bit. We had the Dow up 3%, the S&P up 3.2%, and the NASDAQ up 3.6%. So who knows what we'll see today in America. So if you're in the US, you're so fortunate. It'll unfortunately be nighttime for me here in Asia. So anyway, I will be here to cover the news tomorrow. But if we zoom in here, you can see the news here from Watch Guru.
How high we go in the first few seconds of business? The answer is we're up a lot. 1,400 points on the Dow still rising. That's over 3.5%, significant gain. And look at that, every single one of the Dow 30 in the green. Somebody's buying up worse than one. One has just popped into the red. Oh no, he's popped back into the green. So that's a full house of green. The S&P 500, that's up more than 3%.
Yep.
3.3% at 169 points. The NASDAQ composite, solid gain right there. We're at 3.7%, 585 points. Back to big tech. Let's have a look at them. We've got them all higher. Amazon, Meta, Alphabet, Microsoft, Apple, all up better than 2%, sometimes 5% to the upside.
You see?
Take a look at United Health Group.
Amazing, huh? But let's keep watching because now I have a video clip for you on Trump's, where his mind's at. You know, what he's thinking, what his plan is, what his strategy is. And let's take a listen. And you'll see the benefit the US is already starting to see come in because of the tariffs. This is why I don't believe the market is going to be down for too long. You can see it's already starting to bounce back. And this is why I do support President Trump and what he's doing. I think it's extremely, I don't want to use bad words here. It's not really a bad word, but it is an extremely gutsy and brave thing that he's trying to do in the market, but you can see it's already paying off.
It's going to be a very interesting year. We have an interesting time. We're making a fortune with tariffs. $2 billion a day. Do you believe it? I was told $2 billion a day.
$2 billion a day. Wow.
About tariffs. We're making $2 billion. This isn't 35 million. That's peanuts. $2 billion a day. In addition, we have a lot of countries coming to see us and want to make a deal. And I really think we're helped a lot by the tariff situation that's going on, which is a good situation, not a bad. It's great. It's going to be legendary. You watch. Legendary in a positive way, I have to say. It's going to be legendary. And I do think that the war with the world, which is not a war at all, because they're all coming here. Japan is coming here as we speak. They're in a plane flying, lots of them, all tough negotiators. But things that people wouldn't have given us 2 years ago, wouldn't have even thought of it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7. They're giving us everything. They don't want tariffs on themselves. And
Right.
very simple. We're making deals and people are paying tariffs. Countries are paying tariffs. Right now, China's paying a 104% tariff. They pay 104%. Now, it sounds ridiculous, but they charged us for many items 100%, 125%. Many countries, they've ripped us off left and right. But now we saw it turn.
Oh, let me pause there. That was enough. But you can see, it's happening in real time. That's why I've said in past shows, you have a front row seat to history. You are watching history unfold in the most magnificent way, if I could say so. So that's why you just have to have your sea legs. As long as you're taking care of your family, taking care of your health, you're sleeping well, you're buying Bitcoin if you can, as you can see, like all the top crypto whales are doing, then you have nothing to be worried about, seriously. So quite amazing. And then, I just had to mention this just quickly because there was some conversation and rumoring going on about how, because the market was reacting so bad, people were panicking so much that Trump named them panickers. Panicans. Sorry, panicans. Oh my God. It's so shocking. I will admit, it's literally shocking. The nerve this president has to he's just like a meme maker. He just says random things and they're all memeable. It's really quite funny. But anyway, there was talk about him putting a temporary pause on the tariffs. And of course, it came out, in the news that this was false. This was not true. This was fake news. I don't know who started circulating this fake news, but it happens. I'm just here to tell you it's fake. And in terms of the positive change we're seeing happening in the world and in the marketplace already, you can see, as shared here by Watch Guru, that Apple today or yesterday already has been flying in 5 full planes of iPhones to the US, I imagine, to stop producing them overseas and to stop the tariffs, right, to be imposed on them. So we have that happening. We also have this quick little interview I'm going to play for you by our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who's brilliant. And I've heard so many people comment on his background, his professional, qualifications, which I also shared with you in my early days when he was being nominated to be Treasury Secretary. He does come, he's been like a CEO managing his own asset, hedge funds, and I don't know all the details right now. But anyway, let's listen to this interview. And so let's just take a listen.
Tell you that there are 50, 60, maybe almost 70 countries now who have approached us. So it's going to be a busy April, May, maybe into June. And Japan is a very important military ally. They're a very important economic ally. And the U.S. has a lot of history with them. So I would expect that Japan's going to get priority just because they came forward very quickly. It's going to be very busy. And President Trump, again, gave himself maximum negotiating leverage. And just when he achieved the maximum leverage, he's willing to start talking. Larry,
How amazing. I can only imagine the conversations that are happening between Scott Bessent, Secretary of Treasury, and Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce with Trump, and then all these conversations. I just wish so much I could just peek through the curtain and listen to the conversations that are happening, that they're having, because they're brilliant people with such incredible experience, and now all their superpowers have been united. That's what I see, and that's why I believe these days are so exciting in the market. But let's keep moving on. So I hope you caught that. Almost 70 countries. So imagine what kind of news you're going to wake up to today if you're in the US. How many more countries will have been coming, to the table to negotiate? So I definitely think this is going to be over much sooner than later. We heard Caroline Leavitt. What is she? She's like the House, I forget her title, but anyway, she gives all the announcements for Trump. And she was saying that, and I agree, the White House, the Trump administration moves at Trump speed, which is very fast. And that's why I always say, you have to pay attention to the track record people give you, the pattern they display to you and how they work, how long it takes for them to work, their reasoning process. And if you can see that somebody like President Trump moves fast, just think about all the things he's accomplished since he's been in office. And it's been, I think we're coming up on 4 months. So if you take that into account, as much as people also want to say he doesn't care about the stock market. I don't think that's true. I think he just has priorities, and his own businesses are obviously affected by the market's conditions as well, and all of his closest friends and his children. And he's very much so connected to the overall stock market. So it's not that. I think he just has priorities, and this is a top priority. Doesn't mean he forgot about the Bitcoin strategic reserve or the crypto stockpile. It doesn't mean those things. It just means you have to deal with things in order of their importance. And that's what's happening right now. And like these new regulatory frameworks that are being rolled out are going to have a long-term positive effect on the market. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. But as you can see, this was a quick turnaround, as shared here by Watcher Guru as well, that the European Union already had a change of heart. And it's all ready to discuss. It hasn't even been a week since they came out with their strong statement saying they were going to have to, retaliate and stuff. It's not even been a week, and they are already ready to discuss a 0-for-0 tariff with the US. We have Israel agreeing to eliminate trade barriers and trade deficit with the United States. And then we have some key strategic, well-founded, well-experienced perspective shared here by Chamath Palapatiya, who's also a co-host on the All In podcast, which I highly recommend you go watch. And he breaks it down for us. He says, as many problems as the U.S. may have, which we know the U.S. still has many problems to deal with, I would say that China's are worse. China, number one, is seeing the slowest growth they've had in decades. 2, their attractiveness as a recipient of foreign domestic investment has come to a halt. 3, they have a very difficult demographic problem of too many old people and not enough young people. 4, they need exports. They do not have the capacity to absorb everything they create. This is what I was saying in a few videos ago, that China has a very delicate problem, a big problem, in that they both produce tons of goods, okay, of which the U.S. has been the biggest consumer of. So if the U.S. puts a stop to importing, makes it very difficult with 104% tariff, okay? So if they make it very difficult, they put a high barrier of entry into the U.S. with their goods, then that puts them in a position of having to buy their own goods or stop their manufacturing. Do you see the predicament that it puts them in? And this is why they will come to the table to negotiate. They just will. Now, from a personal standpoint, aside from being an American, okay, because that is a slightly biased opinion. It is a biased opinion I have because I am American. But I'm also Bolivian from South America. And I consider myself very much so like a global citizen because I've lived in Thailand now, on and off for over 5 years and all over the world, really, my whole life. So I do love the world tremendously. And in my heart of hearts, I do and would wish that the whole world have fair trade across the board and that it not necessarily favor the U.S. more. I think it should be fair. But as an American, then I can definitely tell you that being that the U.S. is also a superpower that despite its history of sometimes, oppressing smaller countries, which the U.S. has had that reputation as well. And if you're from another country, then you would know what I'm talking about. But all, in large part, the U.S. stands for democracy. It has stood for and standing against terrorism and has been a first responder to global catastrophes. We've sent aid all over the world. There's so many incredible things that the U.S. does offer the world. A checks and balance in not allowing, dictators and mainly dictators and cartel groups to run rampant. The U.S. has had operations throughout all of South America trying to stop human trafficking, so many horrible things. So all in all, I do think it is important for the U.S. to stay in power. Now, if you disagree, let me know in the comments, and perhaps I'll do a deep dive on this. I don't have all the facts at the top of my head where I could just spit out to prove all the points I'm making, but I have watched countless hours and hours for years now of, documentaries and research on the global situation and why it's important for the U.S. to remain a superpower, not to oppress smaller countries, but remain a superpower, remain in control. It's like the parent in the room, right? Like everyone in a room, everyone in a family has rights, but there's something behind the importance of parent, right? Kids who grew up without parents, which is so sad, they're forced to make decisions without having all the power, and they have no one to look after them. And the U.S. in many ways represents that figure, that role in the world. Anyway, moving on regarding Bitcoin and Bitcoin's market, you can see that Bitcoin, because of this, this tariff news and like the fear spreading across all markets, you can see that Bitcoin lost 5,124,348. It went down 25.8%. And while that does seem, shocking and a little terrifying, once again, if you're new to Bitcoin, just know this, that this has always happened in past bull runs, always, for some reason or another. And that's why they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes, right? And if we look at other times in history for other reasons that something similar has happened, a similar correction in Bitcoin's price, you can see it happened just in this last bull run. You can see that in 2024, in January, we had a correction of 24.1%. In July of the same year, 22.4%. In August, just a few months later, 1 month later, we had a correction of 27.5%, and in September, 29.9%. So it's not uncommon to see corrections like this in Bitcoin's price. Now, back to what I was saying a moment ago, you can see that people like Arthur Hayes, who's a co-founder of BitMEX, a big exchange, he's currently nibbling, is what he says, buying BTC all day, buying in, right? And that's what whales, that's what smart money does during times of extreme turbulence in the market. That's why you have people like Warren Buffett saying, be fearful when everyone's greedy, and be greedy, or go shopping, right? That's what you do when you're greedy, you go buy. Be greedy when everyone else is fearful. And that's what you can see people like Arthur Hayes is doing. And I know many other investors as well that are doing the same. So as Mr. Crypto on X points out, we're still in this falling wedge pattern, although I don't think it's going to last long. Many people have many reasons to believe and project that this month, April, and next month, May, will bounce back bullishly for so many reasons, okay? For all of the mass adoption that's happening globally, the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, all this crypto regulation, so many nation states and massive companies buying Bitcoin. We just had huge purchases last week, which I covered in detail in my videos. So we will see an aggressive buyback. And you can see that many big blue chip companies in crypto are moving forward despite the turbulent times. And that's what good companies do. They don't stop just because the market's down. They keep going, they take advantage of this time, of this quiet time, to keep building. And you can see that XRP yesterday, it launched its first ever US XRP ETF. How amazing. And we know that XRP will be in the crypto stockpile, in the US's crypto stockpile. So that's amazing. And that's not all. Ripple, or the mother company of XRP, also acquired a crypto-friendly prime broker called Hidden Road for $1.25 billion. So this adds to their infrastructure as it's expanding and growing in the US and in the world. What else? Now, I alluded to this in my last video 2 days ago now, and this was before this was publicly announced. So if you saw my last video, you would know I said this if you watched the whole video. But the Fed, sure enough, is having a closed board meeting. So we have not seen the date on this yet. So maybe we will today. And if you're in the US, then lucky you, you'll get to hear about it. But I will cover it in my next video as soon as we get an update. But the chatter is, conversation is, because the market reacted so negatively, you can see that chances are the Fed will be forced, as I've said in my past videos, will be forced to cut rates. And if they cut rates and they start quantitative easing and printing, as you can see shared here by Walter Bloomberg, then this will kick off the bull run, guys. So I hope you're ready. This will kick things off. And you can see here that, as shared by Global Markets Investor, the stock market is also extremely oversold, which also means that this is not an accurate reflection of how the market would actually be doing without all this fear in the market. And it does also point to the fact that we will very likely see a bounce back very, 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 very soon. So once again, I hope you're ready. And to wrap things up, you have Zero Hedge here on X also saying that this, quoting a statement by Goldman, the head of risk at Goldman Sachs, saying, "I've been negative, but now I'm bullish. And it's time to start scaling in." So how exciting is all of this? It's extremely exciting. I cannot wait to come back tomorrow and report to you what happened overnight, depending on where you are in the world once again. But these are extremely exciting days. We have so much change going on with so many countries coming to the table to renegotiate their tariffs. It's already having a positive effect in the S&P, in the Dow. The whole market is already starting to react. We have the Fed also having this closed door conversation on what they're going to do next to help the market. So I believe these are literally the most historic days we've seen in the economy, and it's just very exciting. So I hope you're excited and not afraid and just staying steady and just buying more Bitcoin if you can. So anyway, guys, that's it for today, and I will be back here tomorrow. Take care.